There we go. Welcome everybody to this June meeting of Learning and Skills. Quite a large agenda today and some important items on it. We're a little bit thin on the ground, but we are core it. So we'll go to item 1 on the agenda. Apologies, please.
Okay, Chair, we've got apologies from Councillors Carol Robinson, Ala Davis and Josie Ewing.
Okay, so that would suggest that others are going to be joining us shortly. The second item on the agenda is election of vice chair. We've had a nomination of Councillor Lucy. I think I'm able to take nominations today as well. So Councillor Lucy's been nominated. Are there any other nominations? No. If not, can I have a formal second for Lucy, please? Thank you, Gareth. And I'm assuming you're all in favour.
In favour,
Good.
Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Lucy. You've already said that you were prepared to do this, so thanks for that help and reassurance as Vice Chair.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Lucy. Item 3 on the agenda, disclosure of interest. Anybody got anything to disclose? And similarly, declarations of party whip at 4. Anybody got anything to comment on there? Judging on your silence, we'll move on. And that takes us to the minutes of item 5 on your agenda. And they're the minutes of, let me have a look. They're the minutes of the 2nd of May, 25. Members, they've been circulated. Is everybody content that they're a true and correct record of that meeting? Yeah, got a proposer and a seconder there. Thank you very much. All in favour?
No, sorry.
Oh, sorry, it's a query.
Sorry.
I
have raised this with Kath. On page 20, last paragraph, it says about a SOT analysis should be SWOT. It needs to put an extra W in.
That's been amended from the pre-meet, Councillor Gareth.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
I've still got a problem with my headset. I'm going to have to go into another room to listen to this.
Sorry, Clive, we can hear you.
Right, we've got a few voices going on today, back and forth, but we'll persevere if we can. Gareth will correct that typo there. With the correction of that,
Chair.
with the correction of that typo, can we agree to sign these minutes off?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody against them minutes? Judging on your silence. Okay. Moving on. That takes us to item 6 on your agenda, and that's school standards and improvement report. We'll firstly go to Councillor Peat to introduce the report, and then I'm assuming Anne Wynne will give us a brief introduction to the report. Councillor Peat, please.
Thank you ever so much, Chair. This is the second report that you've had this year in relation to schools improvement. First one you had in confidential session prior to the formalisation of the exam results and provision of information about school-family relationships. The report highlights the outcomes of ESTIN inspections across the entire Powys Schools estate since the start of 2022, highlighting a number of areas of concern here. The report touches on the improvements that have been made and the areas that have been highlighted as concerns that run as a pattern across the school service. It then moves on to looking at the exam results for the last academic year. These are the first set of exam results that Powys pupils have had since the COVID pandemic, where there has been no form of moderation of the result score. So we are actually seeing quite clearly now the impact of teaching and learning in respect of our school pupils without external influence coming to bear. The results are not as good as we would want them to be, but there is variation within that. If you look at the appendix that's attached, you can see that all schools have weaknesses in certain areas and strengths in others when compared to different sections. Some schools perform better for their free school meal pupils than the wider cohort and the wider family in which they are judged, assessed. Others are underperforming.
Councillor Pete appears to be freezing on times. He's consistently frozen this time.
To a star information.
Councillor Pete, you're probably not aware, but you are coming in and out. You're freezing a little bit on times, but just we're happy for you to continue, but just be aware that we're missing some of what you're saying.
Thanks for the warning. The report touches on the post-16, but doesn't fully explore the information that I requested in Cabinet when we were talking about the further post-16 agenda. That is work that is still ongoing. Finally, the second appendix looks at the information that is in the schools improvement programme for the service improvement plan over the next 5 years, with targets which will comprise a large part of the response to ESTIN when that is submitted, but is not the full document. I'll pass across to Dr. Richard, with your blessing, Chair, who will go through the paper in a lot more detail.
Welcome. Thank you, Councillor Pete, and welcome to you, Dr. Richard, and Anwen by your side as well. So both of you, when you're ready, please feel free to speak.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll just do a short introduction and then pass over to Anwen, Head of School Improvement and Learning, to take you through the report. I did want to speak as part of this introduction because this is a significant paper and a very important paper, not just for the Education Service, but for our whole council. This paper, I feel, is one of the strongest papers that we've brought forward on school standards and improvement. It uses a very rich and precise database based on the achievement of learners in our schools. And the evaluation in this paper is of a strong standard. What that evaluation indicates is that we have long-standing and systemic challenges in the education system in Powys, and that despite strengths in some schools, overall, the standard of education in Powys has not been effective in meeting the needs of all of our learners. So this report is an important part of us developing and deepening our understanding of the challenges that we face as a whole council. The purpose of the report aims to provide members with a further understanding of the standards of attainment and achievement for learners in Powys and areas of concern. It aims to identify key strengths and areas of improvement identified during our ESTIN school core, interim and monitoring visit inspections up to April 2025. And it also aims to develop the understanding around the concerns identified by ESTIN in our service inspection in February 2025. So we bring together in this paper a rich data source, internal understanding and external understanding from colleagues. Anwen.
Diolch o galon, thank you, Chair. Okay, if I come straight in.
Yep.
I haven't prepared a presentation because I'm hoping that members can ask questions, but if I give you a quick overview of the key elements of the report that I would like you to note. So the purpose of the paper is to provide a detailed update on the standards of attainment and achievement for learners across Powys, especially against their similar schools, or what you'll have picked up are known as families, and modelled expectations, and also a clear update on how Powys schools have performed over time in ESTIN inspections up until the 2nd of June, which is the last date when I had to submit the report. As you will see under section 3, there are concerns that were identified by ESTIN. Hopefully you will see that my report highlights the concerns that were raised by Estyn about the effectiveness of school improvement support and the strategic leadership of additional learning needs over time. Estyn identified that over time, Powys secondary and all-age school inspection outcomes have been poor. And indeed, since April 2022, when inspections recommenced after COVID, every Powys secondary and all-age school that have been inspected have either been placed in an Estyn review category or a statutory follow-up category of significant improvement or special measures. That in itself is a stark statement and clearly shows us there's something that we need to do to improve. In addition, even though the primary profile across Powys is stronger, with 11 primary schools receiving positive spotlights or sharing of effective practice since 2022, as you'll see in the list in 4.5. Unfortunately, a larger proportion of Powys primary schools have been placed in follow-up than you would generally see across the nation. So what are Estyn seeing in our schools? You will see this under 4.8 of the report, but the key areas of concerns that we must address are these. Firstly, the quality of school leadership, especially our leaders' ability to accurately and with accuracy, a good enough breadth, undertake strong evaluations of actual performance in teaching and learning and standards at the school. And also leaders' ability to ensure robust line management arrangements across their schools. Secondly, the quality of teaching. Estyn have picked up that across Powys, we need to ensure that we raise expectations, we raise the level of challenge, and that we raise the level of independence for our pupils, and make sure that the feedback that teachers provide, either verbally or written, has the desired impact on pupils. Thirdly, the provision of pupil literacy and numeracy skills, and to some degree digital skills. But what Estyn have picked up is that progressive development of skills from 5 all the way through. They're picking up that sometimes children are not making the desired level of progress. Fourthly, the level of attendance. Even though primary schools have made progress, unfortunately, none of our secondary and all-age schools have yet to return to their pre-pandemic attendance levels. This is something we need to address, and we certainly need to address the attendance levels of our free school meal pupils. And then fifthly, as you will know from the Estyn recommendations of the local authorities, we need to ensure strong site safeguarding measures are in place across all our schools. Now, under section 5 of the report I've provided on standards of attainment and achievement, hopefully we'll see, especially when you look at Appendix A, the report provides detailed data on the performance of Powys secondary and all-age schools, and highlights areas where outcomes, unfortunately, have declined over time. As Councillor Pete has already stated, 2024 summer outcomes were the first time that we returned to pre-pandemic levels. So we can't compare 2024 outcomes with 23, 22, 21 or 2020 because of the amendments Welsh Government made to the examinations. However, as you will see in that report, especially when you look at our outcomes in number of pupils achieving 5 A-star A's or 5 A-star C qualifications, unfortunately, Powys outcomes in 2024 were below that which we achieved in summer 2019. So that is a big concern. Similar or family of schools do provide us with an accurate overview of Powys school performance. As you will have read, Powys schools and across Wales are grouped into families of around 9 to 10 schools, all based on a calculated index of challenge, with the first family member in the group being the most challenged, and therefore it would be expected to perform below the family average. And the schools numbered 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 being the least challenged in the family, and therefore absolutely should perform above the family average. You will pick up that the families are collated using this form of information. So there's 10 schools in every family, and they're grouped by similar schools. They're based up on the proportion of pupils eligible for free school meals. That's the biggest indicator. Followed by the proportions of pupils living in the 20% most deprived areas. And then followed by 2 elements such as proportion of pupils with an individual development plan or an ALN statement. And then lastly, the proportion of pupils new to English or Welsh or at an early acquisition stage. So looking and comparing our schools against their family schools are absolutely an accurate indication of how our schools are doing. And as you will see in many of the indicators, our schools are performing below the family average across Wales, which is a clear indication of our position. But if you look at all the elements in Appendix A, you will see that Brohydgen, Newtown, Welshpool, Brecon, Llanidloes, Crickhowell and Gwewnefed are all numbered number 1 to 5 in their family. So perhaps you could expect them, as they are the most challenged schools, to be below the family average. Whereas Ysgol Calon Cymru, Llanfyllin, Brocareinion and Maes of Erin are numbered 6 to 10. And therefore, those are the schools in the family that are least challenged. Also, as you go through the Appendix A, there are a number of measures which Welsh Government have used to allocate and compare our schools. And many of them are based around the points allocated. So between every grade, there's 6 points. So an A star is worth 58 points. And then they go down in increments of 6. An A is worth 52, a B is worth 46 points, C 40, and so forth. So when you do look at the CAP 9 scores, for example, if there's a difference of 27 points or more, that would mean that a pupil in that school performed at least half a grade lower or higher than their counterparts in other schools. So using that data is really, really important to have a clear understanding of where our schools are. A difference in that CAP 9 of perhaps 0.1 point or 1.5 point really isn't a big difference, but over 27, I would suggest, is significant. Then you will see under 5.9 of the report that we look at the performance of both girls and boys and girls. And unfortunately, across most of our schools, they do underperform compared to their family counterparts. But the performance of boys is of greater significance. Similarly, 5.10 shows that the performance of Powys pupils not eligible for free school meals is definitely below that of their family counterparts. However, in around half of our Powys secondary and all-age schools, I am pleased to see that the performance of pupils eligible for free school meals are doing relatively well compared to their family counterparts, but in the other half, not. You will also see that I've given you attendance data with a majority of Powys schools performing below their family average in their attendance percentages. And you will see that, like the case nationally, that the attendance of boys is generally higher than that of girls. Then we come to section 5.14 onward, which looks at the outcomes of post-16. With the local authority of Powys having a very low free school meal percentage, you would expect Powys to be within the top 5 local authorities across Wales. But what is stark is that decline in Powys outcomes over the years, with at best in the indicators, Powys schools performing 14th out of 22 local authorities. This is of significant concern and the reason why, a key reason why we're looking at the post-16 agenda. And then, as Councillor Pete Roberts said, at the end under section 6, we have shared our draft IBP, Education Integrated Business Plan, with you, where Councillor Pete has worked with us and Dr. Richard Jones, the Director of Education. As a whole service, we've worked together very, very closely to put together the IBP, which outlines the actions we have planned across the service to address the areas of concern and underachievement. These actions are designed to address the underlying factors that have led to the current situation of decline over time and lay out the grounds for consistent and sustainable improvement across Powys. So to touch base, as a result of our IBP, the work of the school improvement officers have already been amended, with a clear focus on first-hand evidence being undertaken this summer term, and the first-hand evidence being collated alongside school leaders. The outcome of this level of support and challenge will be clear at the end of the summer term when we collate all the summer term reports. So at the end of the summer term, stroke the beginning of the autumn term, we will be in a position to provide you with a more detailed overview of the position of our primary schools, because I'm sure that you'll have all thought, yes, this is detailed on our secondary schools, but what about our primaries? But that will come to you in a report later on this year, when we've finished all our summer term visits and concluded our work there to collate it. So reassurance is that that will be back with you later this year. Diolch y galon, Cadeirydd. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks to the three of you. Yeah, it's given us a great introduction, and the report is very detailed. It's not a report that we want to see, but yeah, the detail is there for us to clearly understand. Members, I think we're in an opportunity now to take questions. Councillor Lucy.
Yeah, thank you. I really just wanted to thank officers for the amount of information that's produced in this report. It is very detailed, and as you say, it's not information that we would want to see, but we're very pleased to see what appears to be a very honest report and a very open report. Huge amount of information, and it's really good to see that is then provides something to work on. It's obviously the Education Integrated Business Plan is going to be the key in how you work on what you've identified in the report, and it would be great to see the detail behind that and the actual things that are going to happen in school, because I think that's what we always tend to lack is the detail. So yeah, look forward to going into that in a bit more. Oh, sorry, getting more information on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lucy. Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just going to section 1.2 of the report, where you give the total pupil numbers of 15,169 in reception to year 11. Do you have any details around what the numbers in post-16 are, what the numbers of those home educated are, and what is the net effect of pupils going out of county? Or even coming in county, so just we can get a better understanding of what the total cohort is for the number of children we should be educating.
Anybody like to pick that up?
So Councillor Jones, if I can come in, Chair.
Please speak freely. Go on.
Yeah, sorry. Councillor Jones, if you give us a few minutes, I give you the actual numbers rather than giving you an estimate of what I roughly know what they are, but perhaps Sarah Quibell is on the call. Perhaps Sarah, if you can quickly confirm the number of EHE numbers, and then we'll come back to you on that one.
Yeah.
Can I come back? Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, the one that concerns me is that every time I ask, we don't seem to know how many learners we've got being educated elsewhere in terms of our mainstream schools.
Thank you. during this meeting, I'll have the actual numbers rather than me
Okay.
giving you an
Right.
estimate. And can I come back on Councillor Roberts's, Lucy Roberts's comment there? We just want to give you reassurances that next week, well, this week we've got area heads, and next week we've got governors conference. Councillor Roberts, just to confirm that as part of the area heads and governor conferences, the next part of our work is to share the IBP with key stakeholders and allow them the opportunity to help us shape the next level of team plans. So hopefully any of you who are LA governors and in attendance next week, hopefully you will form part of the detailed conversations with us around the IBP.
Okay, thank you, Anna.
Good. Councillor Angela.
Yeah, repeat what others have said there. Thank you for the introduction. And when you referred to the need to improve leadership in our schools, and that's something we've heard many, many times over the years. And my concern here is that, well, it's that deja vu moment, isn't it? Reading this report and thinking we've had reports similar to this before. But where I'm concerned here, I'm wondering, do officers in the local authority accept any responsibility for this report? Because when I'm reading the recommendations on page 36, recommendation 2, to strengthen the quality and impact of leadership, implied to me that this is of the local authority, because this ESTIN inspection is of the local authority. So I'm just wondering, yeah,
Dr.
where
Richard,
you stand there.
Dr. Richard's coming in,
Yeah,
Angela.
thank you very much, Councillor Davis. No, you know, the report refers to, yes, the report refers to leadership at all levels, including political leadership. You know, as a service and as leaders in the service, we absolutely accept our responsibility for our roles around improvement. But that responsibility does also lie with school leaders. Our responsibility is to provide a service which supports and challenges our schools to be the best that they can be, and for us to get the culture right in the authority, so that we know our schools based on first-hand evidence. We are there to support, but we are also there to challenge. Now, in the Education Integrated Business Plan, there are also actions which relate to our own professional learning as a service, which we've already started to undertake. That's involved us going out to other local authorities like Torvine, Newport, Pembrokeshire, to look at best practice and to bring that back into Powys where it's appropriate. So the observation you make about leadership, this is about leadership at all levels, in our schools, in our service, and across our council.
Okay, thank you for that response. And actually, you've sort of beat me at the post really for my 1B question, which was, have you been elsewhere to look at good practice? So clearly you have. So are you confident that you have seen examples of good practice and that you're able to bring them back to Powys? There must be, well, I'm assuming, I don't actually know, but so I'll ask you, there must be local authorities or individual schools that have a track record of good practice, and are there things we can learn?
Yes, so I am confident that we've seen things in other authorities that we're able to bring back. We're always careful not to just transplant practice back into our authority. But we have seen things and we have brought new practices into play, such as data matrix, heat maps, which help us gather intelligence on our schools and support our schools, that we've seen elsewhere. I think one of the key points I want to make about the learning that we are undertaking elsewhere, it's also not one-off. We're in a dialogue with partners, other local authorities, around what our improvement journey is going to look like. So it's not a case of just simply going to visit a local authority for a day. It's about a regular dialogue with authorities that have been in positions as we find ourselves now. The other point I'd like to make around this, there's actually a lot of learning in Powys that we need to better share across Powys, so that we know there are examples of strong practice in our schools, In Estin reports, they're referred to as spotlights, but not exclusively through Estin. We know from our own school improvement advisors where the strong practice is. So we have strategies in our integrated business plan to better promote that sharing of best practice across our schools in Powys. And that's a sharing of best practice that will happen between head teachers, senior leaders, but also between our governing bodies as well. I think that's absolutely crucial, because where we don't want to find ourselves is in a position that what we do doesn't result in sustainable change. So sustainable change built by building capacity in the whole system, rather than simply having a very narrow action plan which addresses a set of recommendations. So I just wanted to expand a little bit then on how we're viewing professional learning from outside and within the authority as well.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, I'm really pleased to get your assurance there that you recognise that we all have a part to play, and I fully support that from, you know, pupil, parent, the school itself, and the local authority. And, you know, I'm a school governor, so school governors as well. We have all got to work together. So I just wanted your assurance there that the local authority recognise their role in this. I was going to say something that, yes, and when you, in your introduction, you actually use the word unfortunately when referring to pupil exam results. And that sort of implied that maybe there was some accidental element or something that had gone wrong. And I just wondered, were you surprised by those results?
No, I didn't mean it as a shock. It is unfortunate that our outcomes have declined, so it's no shocks. But unfortunately, we do need to work with our schools, as I said, to raise level of expectations, the level of challenge and level of independence to make sure that our pupils do perform as well as they possibly can. So there was no intended, so it was a shock. It's a decline over time, it is, and then we haven't returned to our pre-pandemic levels.
Okay, I can see Councillor Gareth's got his hand up, but I've got one more question, Chair, if you'll indulge me.
Yeah, no, you get your questioner.
And I wanted to know, I know that we say all our schools are quite different and one strategy might work in one school and not in another, but I find it hard to believe we're that different across our schools. So I wonder, are there any themes? So are there any themes where our schools are particularly poor at something? Or are there any themes where we're particularly good at something? You said there were incidences of good practice in individual schools that you hope to share, but have you found any themes that could be addressed?
If you look at one section where the spotlights, you will see that and across most of our schools, well-being, so which is inspection area 2, does come out strong in most of our schools. So that is a strength, and we've certainly, if you look at the list in the section 4.5, well-being is coming out really, really strongly in our primaries, but also is coming out as a strength in our secondary and all-age schools. So that's absolutely a strength. We're also having strengths in our primary school of our elements of Welsh medium being supported. So that's coming out strong. But the areas of improvement that really does impact us, and probably is the one element linked to leadership, is the quality of leadership of teaching and learning. Many of our lessons they see are not challenging our learners sufficient enough. What they say is that we're so lucky in Powys that we have such lovely children, such compliant children, that they're just sitting there happy. And what they're saying is in many of our lessons, they see teachers as keeping children busy rather than absolutely challenging their expectations, their level of independence. So that's the one key area that's coming out loud and clear, and an area that we need to focus on.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I just, Councillor Gareth, I note your hand. I think Angela raised a very important point in relation to leadership and management. I think these are key. The one thing which I would want the reassurance on, what sort of system is in place so that leaders are held accountable for pupil outcomes? whether that's in the authority or in the school. Dr. Richard, you mentioned capacity. I think that's an absolutely correct terminology to use, but how is leadership capacity being built to sustain that improvement? And the key to all those two questions is, how is this monitored and reviewed? And when we monitor it and review it, what evidence do we have then that those leadership decisions are having a positive outcome? I think those are the keys to me in leadership. And I don't think we've quite boxed it off with your answers there, but yeah, I acknowledge capacity, but how are we going to build that capacity to give that long-term improvement?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll just come in there on the point around growing leadership and long-term improvement. So what we have introduced and will develop as part of the actions of the IBP is our Powys Leadership Programme for senior leaders in Powys and for middle leaders in Powys. So that means we're looking towards the future. We're supporting the heads that we currently have, growing them professionally, but also thinking about the future so that our middle leaders have that opportunity to step up and step into senior leadership shoes with the support of the authority. As part of the IBP, we're also looking at how our head teachers work better together to support and challenge each other so that we create that system which is sustainable in the future, and the whole system works to support each other through a peer network of professional practice, support and challenge. And just one further observation I'd like to make is we have for the last 12 months and will continue to make significant use of secondments in the local authority. So I referred in a response to Councillor Davis's point about professional learning that it's not just simply a one-off activity. We have brought senior leaders from schools outside the local authority to work at the heart of our schools in Powys. So that's about bringing learning and expertise from outside the authority into the authority. And that brings challenge and reflection to our leaders, because then they become exposed to different ways of thinking and different ways of learning. Just aligned with the work that we're doing as a local authority, we've got representatives on national groups who are working on the national offer to support head teachers and middle leaders, and we're engaged in the thinking and the development around those programmes. I've had really constructive conversations with Welsh Government around the sorts of support that we'll need from central government to help us upskill our leaders and grow the next generation of leaders as well. So we're looking what we can do in Powys, but also, asking Welsh Government colleagues to fulfil their responsibilities to support us in what we need to do. I'll let Anwen come in now on the point around support and challenge.
Diolch o galon, thank you. So firstly, if I start on the element, so what we're doing at the moment is asking all our schools as a part of our first-hand evidence, working with the school leaders, we're collating the improvement areas or priorities of all schools this summer term, so that we can start September immediately with what we call a menu of support and the right people going in to support the schools from the outset. We're also looking very much and working with our colleagues across Ceredigion and even further afield as well to do triad working so that we match up our schools and leaders with leaders from other schools so they can work together on similar priorities and areas for improvement. So that's a really important work. So they're working school to school as well, and leaders can bounce off each other. But also we do have that element of challenge as well. So we did start last September, and this will continue this year again, but will be further increased in challenge. We do call in all secondary heads and chairs of governors. Last year it was once. I'm hoping to do it termly next year, so that the school can absolutely have to justify how they've done, describe how they've performed against their school improvement plan, and more importantly, look at the impact of their work and the next steps for improvement. So we are calling our schools in, and any schools or primary schools causing concern will also be called in, and the Director of Education and the CEO will be present in those meetings in the autumn term, where we can absolutely ask the schools, the head teachers and their governing body to address their school improvement plan and their level of support. But also a big key part of this as well is our governors, making sure that our governors know how to support and challenge their schools. They support really well with well-being, but also more and more importantly, how do you ask the right questions around standards? Do you take everything at face value the head teacher says, or do you ask those questions? So as part of the Governor Conference next week, we do have a big part of that work being undertaken, where we're modelling effective questioning and what type of questions you could ask the head teacher. We're also having Jeff Mesher of Gwenerford High School coming as well to describe their journey and lessons learned from a school that has gone through SI, SM, and now come out of special measures. So that element of sharing of effective practice will be a key part. But absolutely, we will be working with our governors, with our schools, to support and challenge them on this journey.
Thanks both. I think that there's a clear direction there, and I thank you for that. I'm going to, members in the room now, I'm just, Anwen brought up governors. I know there's some questions surrounding governors. If we just hold them off for a minute, unless that's you coming, Gareth, with a question around governors. I've got Councillor James, Councillor Pete, and also the Chief Executive, who I assume are coming in on this theme. I know Councillor James has dripped off. Councillor Pete, are you coming in on this theme?
Yes, I am.
We'll come to you and then we'll go to the Chief Executive.
What I was just going to raise is that with schools in special measures, there are half-termly meetings involving the school service, myself as portfolio holder, and Estin. One of the things I've asked officers to look at is how we can learn from those sessions and actually expand the challenge that they present to other high schools, because in those sessions we will be looking at one area of school improvement, potential proposal that's been brought forward, an area of research that the school is focusing on. And whilst I wouldn't want to put that regime onto every school meeting every half term, not least because I don't think the staff in headquarters would have the capacity to do it, I think there is some value of greater challenge, and Ammon has alluded in part to that, but we want to see how that goes and would potentially look to expand it further.
Thank you. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 4 points that I'll make very succinctly. I think first, from my perspective, we've got a culture of complacency across Powys. So I recognise that, and I feel that this report demonstrates that in respect of the standards and how we fare compared to other schools. The second element is around us setting our expectation as a local authority. We need to be really clear about our expectation. And from my perspective, we need to be leading the way. We have got very good, capable children. What we need to do is make sure that the quality of our teaching improves, and that we do challenge our learners, because actually they could be leading the way and should be leading the way in Wales. And so that's a firm aspiration. Thirdly, I've actually been going out to schools myself. Obviously, there's a lot of schools to get around, so I can't meet every single one immediately. But I am working through them, as well as attending the forums that Dr. Richard Jones and Anwen have referred to. And part of meeting the schools and the school leaders is about setting that expectation and actually questioning, what are we doing? What more do you need from the authority? What are you doing within the school? Where's your focus, etc. And the fourth element for me is not just about getting our schools out of category. So, Anwen, I know you referred to Gwenerford and the learning about moving out of category, but let's not pretend that Gwenerford is leading the way. It's not. And actually, if we read the report, I'm not just picking on Gwenerford, there are others that as we move out of category, moving out of category doesn't mean we're good. It's adequate. We don't want adequate. We want to lead the way. We want the very best for our learners. So the next step is, so how do we build on that, and how do we drive the positive change? So I just wanted to set the level of ambition, please, Chair, and our expectations being really clear about what we want and how we're going to succeed together to achieve that for our learners. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief Executive. It's good to hear them parameters, and we all agree with you surrounding this. Councillor James, you've put your hand back up. Sorry, Councillor Gaffer, I know you've got a question, and I know you want to leave, but Councillor James, you coming in on the leadership side of it, or is it a separate point?
No, it's a separate point, Chair. That's why I took my hand down. So
okay, we'll leave you there then. We'll go to Councillor Gareth now.
Thank you very much, Chair, and apologies that I can't stay for the full meeting. Yeah, sorry, governors was one of the questions.
Yeah, go for it then.
Yeah, one of the questions was talking about governors that we were talking about, and obviously a little bit more information on holding governing bodies to account and how we do that. But linking into that, I would like a little bit more on our challenge advisors and the capacity to support governing bodies and support schools. Challenge advisors we do see occasionally out and about and everything else like that, but I know obviously understanding the capacity is one of those that I would like to understand for this committee, because it's all well and good putting things in place, but if the support network isn't there, or the support network is stretched too far around the challenge advisors, well actually that's going to not deliver anything. So just around those two in the governing body. But one of the things I would like just to put on record or comment on, and like your views on, is regarding, whilst we're all chasing figures on a piece of paper and outcomes, yes, rightly so, improving outcomes around 5 A stars and everything else like that, but what about our less academic members? I use myself as an example. I left school with 1 GCSE, but it gave me the tools to move on within life. And whilst it's all good to say we want all our children to have 5 A stars plus and everything else like that, we need to give our children those catalysts to move forward. And I am not, well, I won't say concerned is the wrong word. What I would like to say is I want reassurance that actually, despite the results, our children are able to move forward. For the less academic, people with additional learning needs, all different types of people have different paths within their lives, but it's giving those tools. So I would just like a little bit more around that, because if we can't do that basic fundamental, and people may go off to university, they may go off to sixth form, they may go off to college, making sure that they got those tools to go forward. I think that's something within the report we don't really see, and I think it's something as a governor and as a parent and as a councillor, we need to give them those tools. So just a little information and reassurance around that would be very helpful, please.
Yeah, thank you, Gareth. 3 very, very important questions there. Obviously surrounding the governing body. I'd like to add to Gareth's questions surrounding governing bodies, the role of the local authority governor, also vacancies on governing bodies. So add them to that. Really interested on the challenge which is being given to challenge advisors, and obviously pupil achievement and progress, very important, the attainment gap for disadvantaged pupils, etc., etc. So 3 very, very important questions. So if we can deal with them 1, 2 and 3, that'll be very, very appreciative. Thank you. Dr. Richard.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you for the questions. We will answer them in the order that they've arisen. There's a point I'd just like to make before we respond directly to the question around SIAs. School improvement it's bigger than just the SIAs, as you know. It's about the whole service. And it's about having the right people in the right roles across the whole service, not just in those SIA roles. So I just wanted to provide some assurance that as we have developed the integrated business plan with the strategic actions, we are at the moment looking at the whole service education structure to make sure that we do have the right individuals with the right skills and experience in the right roles to be able to deliver against the actions of the plan. So the plan hasn't been thought up separate from considering the skills and expertise that we have in the service. I'll just hand to Anwyn now to comment a little bit more specifically about that SIA role.
Diolch o galon. Can I come on the governor element first? So some of them are interlinked. So quickly, Councillor Thomas, you asked around the LA governor vacancies. So just to confirm, we do currently have 32 LA governor vacancies, but 9 are in progress and there are 23 in application process at the moment. So as you know, there is an application process, and when an LA governor vacancy comes free, then all members in that school's catchment are informed and asked to see if you want to nominate a member or a member of the community to sit on the governing body. So we are looking at that at the moment, and we are looking to see if we can make that process of appointing an LA governor a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more efficient as well. But also,
and when I'm going to interrupt there, just for a bit of information, how do you regard that, you know, that 32 is far too many vacancies? Who do you believe the responsibility for chasing down those vacancies? Is that with the school or is that with the authority?
LA governor appointment is a local authority appointment,
Right,
so
okay.
it wouldn't be with the school, it would be with, so I hate to say it, with us as a local authority, but with you as members as well, to have the replies. So there's, if I can say, role on both parts, us to chase and members to respond.
So
but we are looking, yeah.
Just to give you an example now, I'm currently not a governor anywhere. So yeah, I know it's quite shocking, but there was a reason for that, etc., etc. But I, as a local member, don't know if there's a vacancy in any of my local schools until you write to me with the nomination. So is there something not quite right there now? I just don't know. It's just something that struck me because I haven't been a governor now for the first time in 25 years. And now all of a sudden, I don't know what's happening in my local schools.
Perhaps, do you know what would be a very good idea if we could, total number of governor positions of LA governors across powers is 226, is that perhaps we shared with you termly, so that you as members, I think are importantly knowing, actually this is coming up in 6 months' time, a vacancy, so that actually we can, as members, can start to think about who would be good as a member or as a member of the community to fill that position. So Councillor Thomas, I think there's a role on both parts here that we work together on that one, but also our LA training as well for governors is really important. The way we work with you to make sure that, you know, you are aware of the vacancies, aware of the roles and responsibilities, etc. So I'm not saying things are perfect at all. It is if we work together, then we can improve that position.
Am I able to come in with just a little supplementary on this one?
Yes, go on, Gareth.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just regarding LEA governors and governors in general, is there any process in place to monitor governors' interactions and involvement? So, because, you know, as councillors, we sit on committees, and there's lots of people over the years I've sat that are very good on screen, but actually they don't contribute towards meetings. And I think that's exactly the same with governors. We need governors who are involved and everything else like that. So is there any way of, when the review comes around, that they're not automatically reappointed, and that's for all community governors and so on? Because sometimes it is a little bit easier just because their name's in the hat to leave them there. There has to be some kind of appraisal process within that to ensure as governors they're contributing towards the school.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Radcliffe. I'll come back in on that. We can, excuse me, we can certainly look at that. I think we can do some work around that area and bring it back to elected members. I do want to point out that we've got the member development session scheduled for July. That will be looking at outcomes and standards in our schools, but also professional learning for our LEA governors. So that's probably a point of conversation we can pick up at that point. What we do know about our governors, not just LEA governors, is they play an absolutely crucial role in holding the school to account and driving up standards in a school. So that will be the focus of our future member development sessions, drawing on best practice from chairs and governing bodies that do that. But I think governing bodies and the accountability function of governing bodies is not something that we've got consistently right across the authority. And it comes back to that relationship question around what does the right culture look like based on the right level of challenge and the right level of support. So that'll be a conversation and professional learning that we'll be bringing forward in early July.
I want to come back in. Sorry, Chair, so if I come back on the SIA question. So we are currently, as I said, we reviewed how our SIAs are working this summer term with an absolute element of first-hand evidence alongside leaders. But to give you reassurances that we are currently remodelling and reworking at exactly how our SIAs and school support will look in September. I won't give you details here today because I don't want to commit to anything that I haven't shared with the heads and haven't been through ELT and AIB yet. But I can give you reassurances. We're looking at the whole model. And as you said, Councillor Ratcliffe, that making sure that the SIA is seen and can make sure that the key messages are shared with schools. So that is something we are currently looking at and will redevelop. And then Councillor Ratcliffe, you looked at the breadth of provision. I'm with you 100% there. So the CAP 9 score is an important element because it's that breadth of provision, which would include vocational subjects and academic subjects. But to make you aware that Welsh Government are currently working on a new series of indicators, and you'll be pleased to hear that the new series are absolutely looking at that bigger rounded person, not just the number of academic subjects, but also vocational subjects. So that is an area that we have looked at as well, and is part of our IBP, looking at that breadth of provision. So it's the right qualification, the right training, the right support for all our pupils.
Okay, there's an interesting conversation in the chat. And again, if members and committee members want to raise these, but on challenge advisors, obviously there's a comment in there from Sarah. It's important to understand that we have enough resource and capacity within our advisors to support the schools, actually physically get around all the schools, etc. And yes, you've mentioned September, but will you be confident come September that you do have enough resource there? Because that's an important consideration for us as local members, because we then need to give some political pressure to the cabinet that you quite simply haven't got enough resource to deal with this.
Sorry, I didn't realise we weren't on it. Yes, Councillor Thomas, absolutely. We are looking at the moment and looking at our demand that we need, how many SIAs we need for September, and we're currently looking at putting out secondment opportunities for our schools, for our potential vacancies. So that's something we're currently working on at the moment.
So, you know, Sarah's comment in there that challenge advisors, there's been different challenge advisors. This is something that's got to change. I would suggest that's down to resource. So, yeah, so we're aware of that, yeah. And Councillor Garrett's third question surrounding disadvantaged pupils. Is there evidence that we can close that gap? Are we supporting them with ALN, etc., etc., etc.? Just trying to summarize what Gareth said briefly, really. Come on, Anwen.
Yeah, actually, when you look at the data, half of our schools performance for free school meal pupils are actually doing better than their family averages. So there's something working well in some of our schools. We need to support our others to make sure they're following equal elements to support, and making sure that that golden thread of supporting disadvantaged learners flows through the whole school development plan. So which is something we are looking at the moment, because every school is submitting their draft SDP to us this summer term, so we can look for those common themes and make sure they're strong enough.
Councillor Gareth, do you want to come back on anything? Oh, I think he may have disappeared, actually. Yeah. Okay, we'll assume you're content, Councillor Gareth. Councillor Gareth E.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just follow on from that point around ALN? It's most likely the major area that members of my ward, parents, schools raised with me about the lack of apparent support being provided from the centre, and I feel that this paper is a little bit weak around that. But I will hold my my powder until I attend the governor's conference next week, so I get a better feel of that. Can I just ask? I've got 4 other questions, Chairman. I'm afraid.
You ask them, Gareth, please.
Right. The first one is part of the medium-term financial plan. If my memory serves me right, there's a £400,000 saving identified or proposal identified for the central staffing budget for the service. I'm just wondering, how does this paper impact on that 400,000 and whether that saving target will be achieved in this year? The second one is around an error in the figures on section 2.3 of the CAP 9 scores. I've only picked up one school. If you look at Brecon High School in terms of free school meals, it says that the school's performance CAP 9 score is 364.3, families 327, but it shows minus 37.2 for the school, where it should be a plus 37.2 for the school. You know, it's just another example that I seem to be picking up all the time about errors in numbers. Can I ask a question around section 5.15 of the report and also section 3.3 of Appendix A? It's all about post-16. I'm just wondering, how have you done any work around the significant number of learners that are going out of county for post-16? To Hereford, Shrewsbury, Merthyr. The table on section 3.3 of the Appendix A said the performances those with addresses in powers. I'm just wondering, in the authority, I'm just wondering, do those include those learners going to other sixth form provision, both in Wales and England? And what the impact of those learners going out of county has had on the overall performance or attainment of post-16. My guess is that it most likely is some of the better quality learners that are going out of county, and if they'd stayed in county, then our performance at those higher levels may have been better. That's 3. And the last one then is around the paper itself. Sections 7 to 13 of the report are blank. And I'm just wondering, when that is completed, will we as a scrutiny committee have the opportunity to make comments on those sections of the report once they're completed?
There we go. 4 questions from Councillor Gareth there. Who's coming back in? I guess you're looking at different sections now, officers. There we are, Dr. Richard. Dr. Richard.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. There's quite a few questions there. So I'll just respond to the savings target, which is in our FRM, the £400,000 target. We are on track to meet that saving. I think the key point that I want to make around that was the structure has changed, but the saving remains. The key for us is to have the right structure which can deliver on the actions of the IBP. There will be alterations within the service. There will also be some new roles added into the service, which we'll be advertising externally and internally, but the saving does still remain.
Okay, thank you.
Diolch. Can I come in? Apologies, that's a typo. Yes, I thought I double checked, triple checked, but obviously not. So take that one on board. I've circled it in red. Councillor Jones, thank you. Going back to your very, very beginning comment around ALN support, can I remind all our members as well that we don't retain very little of ALN budget. It is delegated out to schools at the moment. But what we do see is that some schools are not very good at attending the drop-in sessions or working with their caseworkers. So we are looking at how schools are engaging with the support available. And for example, where the schools where we have identified concerns, we have a intensive work around Adele Bates on behaviour, but also de-escalation training through Team Teach available for all our schools. But Councillor Jones, we will take that on board and see which schools do engage and which ones don't. CAP 9, I've done that one, sorry, around your post-16 question then. So if you go into 4.16 of the report, where we look at the 4-year ALPS trends, this summary document I've put in actually shows the progress every group of learners have made. So the top ones are those with a high target of the most able, all the way through to the ones of lower targets. And if you go to the right to the very end in section 20 for the 23-24 academic year, you will note the very last column says ALPS grade 6, 5, 5, 4, 6, 5, 6, 6, 5, 6, 7. Basically, if you were scoring number 1, 2, or 3, that would tell you that as a local authority, that group of learners are performing within the top 25% of schools and or local authorities nationally. So unfortunately for Powys, none of our groups are performing exceptionally particularly well. So in answer to your question,
sorry, Anne, that's not the question I asked them.
oh,
The question I asked is what account do we take of those pupils that are educated about 16 out of county in terms of our figures? And do we make adjustments to take account of that? My assumption is we're losing the better learners out of county. I may be wrong, but I'm just wondering how would that impact on the figures that are shown in section 5.5 of the main report?
yeah. I don't have that data on hand, but I think you would be correct in assuming that the more able are the ones that are leaving. But what I wanted to try and reiterate is, regardless, any group of learners are not doing particularly well.
Okay,
The one that's doing the wells are the ones that 1, 2, 3 in the 4th category. They're in number 4, which is just below that top 25% nationally.
So do you have the information about the out of county?
We have how many are out of county, but we don't have the outcome results for last year because they're obviously with the Shrewsbury or Hereford colleges.
Yeah, but you've got the GCSE results from 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think Gareth's point is very relevant here. Maybe some of the recommendation which we will come up with later in the meeting. And the last point that Gareth made was in relation to pages 7 to 13. Was it? Section 7 to 13.
Oh, yeah.
Where there's nothing
This is
in the
just
report.
information, isn't it? The shaper. If I can, oh, yeah.
All I want to know is, I assume they're going to be populated sometime, and it's just whether we get a chance to comment on it or not.
I think so, but this paper was actually for information for you as scrutiny more than a recommendation, or it's for you to support you as scrutiny to be able to challenge us, but also to challenge your schools if you're an LA governor appropriately as well. So it's that information and setting a baseline for us all.
Okay, so it's not going to cabinet.
Just for information, that's all.
Okay.
Anything else you want to come back on there, Gareth?
No,
I think Gareth's first point in relation to funding and things, I would like to discuss resources and funding at some point during this session. But let's go. Councillor James, I'm mindful your hand's been going up and down, and I've held you for a long time, so I'm going to come to you next, Councillor James.
Chair, my point was really I wanted to address the post-16 issue, which is in my area of responsibility in the cabinet. And if you wanted to continue the discussion around leadership and such, then I'm happy to drop back in.
No, come on.
Okay, I just wanted to make the point.
Briefly.
Gareth has raised post-16, and I think the point he makes about learners leaving the county to go elsewhere or go to alternative provision in county is a really important one. But I think I want to make a general point really is that if ever we needed evidence of the need for some pretty radical reform in the post-16 system in Powys, this is it. This paper sums it up. I mean, if you look at the detail around the decline in performance in terms of the outcomes for pupils in the tables, it is quite shocking. And the answer to Gareth's point about pupils leaving the county is we have to create a system which will enable them to stay in county and get the sort of the level of provision that they're able to access elsewhere. And I really hope that the committee, when we come forward with proposals around post-16, will look at those in a positive with a positive view, because it's quite clear carrying on as we are is doing a huge disservice to our learners in county. That's not to say that individual learners are not doing very well. They are. and individual schools are doing well in perhaps limited over a limited range and circumstance. But if actually for me, I mean, actually these are quite shocking statistics. Some of these, we're in a situation where only 65% of Paris A level sixth form students are getting 3 grades A star to E, and let's be frank about it, an A level grade below C is not really very much use to one in life, particularly if it's a mechanism, since the principal mechanism of doing A levels is to get one into higher education. Turn that around, that's 35% of the sixth form pupils are not even getting 3 grades A to E, A star to E. These outcomes affect the rest of their lives in a really big way. They set the direction. Yes, it is. Within figures there'll be situations where people may have got two A or 2 A stars and didn't do a third A level. That's probably true. And I think some clarification from Anwen and Richard around how that issue, where are the pupils that only did 2 A levels, where do they sit in here? Also, we don't see the dropout rate between years 12 and 13, and that's quite significant as well. And I just think this is we're reaching a culmination really of many years of inaction on this issue, and if we don't take some radical action, this situation is going to deteriorate further, and the life chances of an awful lot of young people in the county are going to be adversely affected. And I think perhaps the other thing we need to bear in mind is those pupils accessing, particularly those pupils who live in the middle of the county, but who don't have easy access to learning opportunities outside, so don't live near the border with Herefordshire or Shropshire or Merthyr Tydfil, or indeed East Talbot or Swansea County. They are undertaking very long journeys every day to access post-16 education, and it's fair to assume that they're probably from more affluent families. Those on the from the lowest income families are probably going to struggle to be able to do that sort of thing. So I think there's a social issue here. So the point I'm trying to make, really, Chair, and I'm sorry I'm rambling a bit, is that it's very important, this section of this report. We tend to concentrate on the statutory age children, 11 to 16, and GCSEs. But I've been around long enough in this council to remember that Paris used to be consistently within the top 3 counties in Wales for GCSE and A-level outcomes. And here we are languishing in the bottom quartile. And that just cannot continue. It has to stop. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor James, and thanks for giving your input there on your new portfolio. Yeah, we tend to agree with you. And when we did discuss post-16 in our previous meeting, and you'll see our recommendations attached in this meeting, we did agree with you. And that's why we were keen for it to go out to engagement to find some solutions. It's just where we're in disagreement that some of the solutions may not be but again, we hope this engagement teases that out. So yeah, we do agree with you. I've got a few people waiting for some time now, but please, anybody wants to come back in on what Councillor James said, please do so. Councillor Stu.
Thank you, Chair. Everything I've wanted to say has more or less been said by Councillor Gareth, but you can see my comments in the chat about half an hour ago was around the challenge advisors, but he's more or less covered that, so I don't want to go over it again. But just to say about the lack of consistency that we did have while we were going through inspections in both the schools that I'm attached to, was quite hard to believe, really. The amount of challenge, I don't know if you call them challenge advisors now, but the amount of people that were in and out was hard to take. I'm really glad to hear the comments of the Chief Exec about the support for our pupils and her visits to the schools. And I hope she can get around to visiting my 2 schools in the not too distant future. One little comment, it seems petty to make in this very serious discussion session we're having today, but it was about the disclosure forms we had to fill in about becoming governors again. I mean, God, after 28 years, I really felt like packing it in to fill in those forms. They're very onerous. Councillor Pete finally signed mine off on the very last day that my name was going forward for re-election of chair of Ysgol Bro Tower. it went on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it really did make me feel like packing it all in. But anyway, most of it has been covered. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Sue, for that input. Yeah, we note your comment about challenge advisors, and I think there was an answer in relation to a new way forward from September. Councillor Pete, you have got your hand up. I'm going to ask you for a comment, because in our pre-meet there did seem to be quite a lot of comment in relation to what Councillor Sue said about the form filling, etc., to reappoint LEA governors, etc. Councillor Pete, when you're making your point now, do you want to briefly speak about that? It's something we think that needs to be addressed as well. Okay, Councillor Pete.
Thanks, Councillor Gwynbo. I will do. I first wanted to address Councillor Gareth's comments about pupils leaving the county at 16. We're all making the assumptions either that it's our most academic, or it's pupils that are leaving for better vocational offers. We've all got our own anecdotes, but we don't have the evidence. That was something I made as a point during Cabinet, requesting much more information about who is leaving, who is staying, what their GCSE results are, so that we can actually have a comprehensive understanding of the post-16 offer and how it is performing, because we don't have that information in front of us. And I requested that in Cabinet. So if you come back from scrutiny with a very strong recommendation about greater understanding around the post-16 cohort, I think everyone in Cabinet would say we would welcome that as a strong recommendation to reinforce that.
I think, Councillor Pete, but just before you go on, I think this is something which scrutiny has requested on many occasions, not just in post-16. We need a cross-border report.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I would also be quite open, Chair, and I'm thinking on my feet, if scrutiny wished to look into that as a scrutiny work piece that you want to consider in your work programme, I also would welcome that. Turning to Councillor Sue's comments about governors and the paperwork, I'm also going to draw in the comments that were made. I think it was from Councillor Gareth R, about monitoring of governors and ensuring that governors are actively pursuing. I took a decision very early on that I would be quite strict on the application, because I had a couple of papers come back that essentially said, I want to be my entire reason for being as governor is I'm a county councillor, and it was almost a sense of entitlement. There was no information about what they would do for the school, what their skills were. I made it clear to officers that I would expect people to actually be making a statement as if it was a job application, so that if Estin were to look at the audit, there would be no favour, no discrimination, and there would be a clear audit trail. And it would enable the school governing bodies themselves, if they found a local authority governor who they felt was not delivering what they had said they were, that there was an audit trail that they could then go back to that governor and say, when you reapplied, this is what you said you were going to do and you haven't done it. So yes, so it is onerous, but it is a significant responsibility and an important responsibility. And I'm not in any way going to step back from the decision I took. I respect the work that many governors have put in over many years, but if we don't challenge ourselves and we don't recommit when we apply, we can't hold ourselves to account, and the chair of governors and the school can't hold us to account if we're not delivering those. So I'm sorry if people find it onerous, but I think it's an important step that in reapplying or applying, people are fully aware that this is a responsible job and filling the application forms in just the same way they would any other job application.
Councillor Sue, do you wish to come back? Yes, she does.
Yes, please, Chair. And I do agree with you, Councillor Pete. It does have to be looked at, and we do have deadwood, and our in the past maybe had some deadwood in our governing bodies. But for people, some people, I think Councillor Gwynfor mentioned earlier on, 25 years a governor, myself 28 years a governor. Well, if I haven't proved what I can bring to the governing body after 28 years, I don't know what I got to do to bring it, to make that point. But I do agree with you that some do have to be looked at, but one size doesn't fit all, Councillor Pete.
Thank you, Councillor Seuss. I tend to agree with you. And the other point I would make to you, Councillor Pete, is that, you know, we've just been told in this meeting that we've got an awful lot of vacancies. So maybe we need to look at the system to see that we can fulfill those vacancies.
I would agree with you on that. I hold my hand up. I've asked 10 people to fill one of the vacancies in a school in my ward and had 10 people say, no, I don't have the time to do it. So if there are people out there that anywhere in the county who think they could be a school governor, please get in touch. We're open to any opportunity that arises and any skill set amongst people who think they have something to offer our schools community.
Thank you. Councillor Lucy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wanted to come back on the school governors because I do feel, I mean, there's a huge amount of responsibility now being given to school governors and an awful lot expected of them. And we do have problems filling posts, not just LEA, but sometimes parent governor and sometimes community governor roles. And there's got to be a balance between, you know, is it better to have somebody who can't necessarily contribute as much time as they would like to, but puts in a fair amount of effort and having an empty post? I don't know what the answer is, but I do worry. There are times when I have felt like jacking it all in, and again, having been, I feel, a fairly dedicated governor for many, many years. We have governors who work full time, and they have some very useful skills to bring to the governing body, but they aren't able to come into school during school hours, or very rarely able to do that. So there are all sorts of issues that we need to think about. And I just wondered how many people are coming to the Governor's Conference, you know, as a percentage of those who are eligible to come. I know I myself am having to send my apologies, for which I am very sorry. On this occasion, I can't attend. But, you know, I do wonder, I know I often attend Governor's training when there's been very few attendees to that training. And again, it's not always easy for everybody, but you know, how can we address that, and how can we make it an attractive proposition for people to be on governing bodies, so that they are keen to attend, and make sure that we get the involvement that we need. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lucy. I think you speak on behalf of us all there, and it's not about me, but my decision to step off governors at this present moment in time, because my diary didn't allow it, and I couldn't be a governor that was just there in name, so I couldn't attend much of what Lucy was saying, so I had to step aside. Maybe there'll be return for me in the next couple of years, but it is really difficult because the demands of that governor is getting greater and greater. So there will be some kind of recommendation surrounding this for support for governors, help for governors, etc., because we do see governors an important linkage in what we're trying to achieve in outcomes. So yeah, let's not widen the debate, but that's how we feel. Councillor Angela.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some bitty bits sort of following up from what's been said before. So I'll start there with the governor bit. So I'd put my question in the chat. So in my governing body, there are 3 local authority governor places, I think. There's only me as the local member. So I'm assuming those other places are for the adjoining ward members to become a governor if they want to, but they obviously choose not to for whatever reason, probably don't have the time. So my question is, who do we imagine would sit in a local authority governor role? Because we have community roles, foundation roles, other roles on the governing body. So if not a councillor, who do we assume that local authority governor should be?
Anybody?
Chair, if I come back in straight away on
Go
that
on,
one. So
Elman.
thank you, Councillor Davis, that question. So firstly, we reach out to all members of the catchment area of the school. So members get, if you want, first choice. But if members don't have the capacity to sit on the governing bodies, we ask members to think about a person within the local area that would be good at representing the role of the local authority. So I think the other two members on your governing body are all members of the community, but are sitting as LA governors. Yeah, and are doing a very good job as well.
And really, I just also questioning, as Lucy says, are we better to have a vacant seat than an inactive governor? But are we not held to account if we have vacancies on our governing body?
It's a very fine balance, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
you want governors that engage, and you know, people's private lives, very often sometimes things happen, but if it's an ongoing element, then I think it needs to be addressed. I won't name the governing body, but I know that we haven't re-elected a layperson who was an LA governor on a school governing body because of their attendance over their period of office.
Yeah.
So we are monitoring, and when we look at their attendance, we do sort of say we don't advise that this person is re-elected as an LA governor. So that is something we take into account as officers as well.
Okay, yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, I'm not criticising my neighbouring councillors because I've turned down the opportunity to sit on the high school governing body because I just don't have the time. I don't have an evening a week free. So I want to move on. Councillor Gibson-Watt, you mentioned that it's possible that those travelling out of county for post-16 provision are from wealthier families. But I just want to add there that in our very rural county, some of the pupils, like my own children, who would have to travel to the local town to get to the bus, to get to the county line, to get to the, can be a distance issue as well, not a time or a money, but literally you know, there is no transport, there is no way to get there. So those rural children can be disadvantaged as well. And I wanted to add that Councillor Gareth Radcliffe, he talked about the challenge for perhaps the less academic pupils in needing to have quality education. But we do have the system at the moment, because of our fall in pupil numbers, where to run a sixth form, schools are really driven by the need for bums on seats. And therefore, it's understandable that they're actively trying to encourage as many pupils to stay on for post-16 education as possible. And really, that probably puts the school ahead of the pupils' needs, doesn't it? Because as Gareth says, not everybody is cut out for an academic you know, career or outcome. So in those cases, those pupils have been done a real disservice because, as James says, if they get an A-level result but below a C, it's 2 years wasted, really, isn't it, of their education? And I think that needs to be noted because we need to be questioning our schools about that, if that is the case. But the one I really want to talk about is ALN. I really don't think we've discussed that enough. And recommendation 3 here says we need to strengthen the quality of support and challenge to our schools to improve outcomes for all learners, including those with ALN. And further down, it talks about, sorry, just let me get my notes together here. In 3.3, Estin stated that there were a few examples where school improvement support was effective. Now, few in Estin speak is less than 20%. So in less than 20% of all the intervention, it was effective. And I've got a question here, because from my own experience and what I hear from other parents across the council and other governors is, have we considered that one of the themes that is impacting on these results, over and above the quality of leadership that Anwen mentioned, is the impact of pupils with an ALN in a mainstream class? We have got some pupils with some really dysregulated behaviour patterns who are really disengaged on some occasions because of, you know, other things happening in their lives or their condition or whatever. And that impacts on the whole class. And despite hearing from the authority that we support our additional learning needs pupils, I'm afraid I'm not convinced from my experience. So I want to know, have you considered that as a theme, and how are we going to address it? And in discussing that, I just want to highlight a newspaper report I read yesterday about Ysgol Llwyn Euros in Aberystwyth, where they've had an excellent Estyn inspection that particularly highlighted their inclusivity and their support of ALN pupils. But I note that they do have a special unit, and that was praised. So is there something we're missing there, and could we learn something from that school? Sorry, big long question there for you.
It's a good question, and we haven't discussed families at all. But when we're looking at our placements in the tables, they're not good. But one thing I'm really surprised at with our relationship and our joint workings with Ceredigion, and obviously Aberystwyth School mentioned by Angela, is how far apart we are from Ceredigion. So a comment on that as well, please, if possible, Dr. Richard or Anwen.
Yeah, thank you very much. Chair, I'll come in on the point around the partnership work with Ceredigion, and Anwen will respond to Councillor Davis's point. You're right. When you look at the Ceredigion Estyn report and the Powys Estyn report, you'll note very positive few paragraphs in the Ceredigion report around the impact of the Mid Wales Education Partnership, but that's absent from the Powys report. We have, as an AIB, noted this as a point of concern. We're currently reviewing what the partnership looks like and what we need to do differently, because clearly it's worked for Ceredigion, but it hasn't worked to the same depth for us. My view around it is that we need a better relationship between the professional learning offer, which the partnership generates, so a lot of professional learning, sharing and expertise, and the school improvement function. I think in Powys, our professional learning offer has become divorced from the work of our school improvement advisors. That means the offer has sat there, but hasn't always been precise and specific to target the needs of individual schools and clusters. I think that's where the gap lies. The review we're undertaking, I'm sure we'll bring that forward, amongst other things, as a theme to explain the difference between the impact of the Mid Wales Education Partnership in Ceredigion and the lack of impact on school improvement here in Powys. It's an important observation to make.
Diolch. So just double checking, do you want to come back on that element? No.
Well, that's okay. Thank you for those comments on the partnership. But my question was, do you consider that one of the themes that have affected the results in Powys schools is the impact of ALN pupils in our mainstream schools?
Thank you, Councillor Davis, for that one. So firstly, before I forget to say, because I don't want to miss the opportunity, if you look at Penygloddfa's recent Estyn report, they also had a really lovely spotlight on meeting the needs of pupils with ALN, very, very similar to Llwyn Euros, which around the inclusivity. I just don't want to miss that there is good practice here in Powys as well.
And but does Penygloddfa have a specialist unit or a specialist centre or some specialist teacher support?
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
So,
okay.
No, so I just wanted to raise that bit. But just to reassure you, back in November when we passed the ALN and inclusion paper, part of Workstream 3 was engagement with our schools and communities around review of the specialist centres. So even though I've not got an answer for you at the moment, just to reassure you that the ALN team have now, I think they're probably close to finishing, have engaged with head teachers and NCOs from across all clusters across Powys as part of that review. So there will be further papers and reports and recommendations coming forward in the new academic year around what does the new element of specialist centres look like across Powys. So Councillor Davis, to reassure you, that piece of intensive work is currently underway to answer your question. Is it best to have numerous specialist centres across all clusters and Welsh medium provision, or is it inclusion? So that piece of work is underway at the moment.
Okay, that's a disappointing answer, to be honest, because you haven't told me anything, just that we're going to do something, maybe.
No, we are doing it. I don't want to give you an answer that's not going to come out of the report, because some people would absolutely support mainstream schools, classes being inclusive and that ALN learners are part of it. Others would support specialist centres. So at the moment, we don't have the firm conclusion.
No, but I think what I was talking about is our ALM pupils within our mainstream schools. So have we looked at the support, and do we recognise that having those pupils is having an impact, and have we considered what we could or should be doing that clearly Estin don't think we're currently doing to support those pupils in mainstream?
Yes,
Both
so
for
the
those
answer,
pupils' benefit and for the benefit of the rest of the class that has been disrupted.
Go on,
yes,
Dr. Richard.
yeah, sorry. Yes, so we have considered that. What you'll see in our IBP, although ALN wasn't a recommendation as part of the Estin report, you will see in our IBP that objective 4 from memory relates specifically to ALM provision. So we do have a set of strategic actions in the IBP against recommendation that we will strengthen and improve the outcomes for learners with ALN. So we do recognise it, and we do have strategies in place to address it now. Anwen's point is right, though. We are in wave 3 of the ALN strategy, and that piece of work is happening at the moment to review the provision and the relationship between mainstream schools and specialist. What I will just say plainly, though, there is an increase in demand in our schools to support learners with additional learning needs. Absolutely, I absolutely agree with you. We want to be an inclusive authority. Our responsibility is to work with schools to provide schools with the professional learning they need to keep those learners with additional learning needs where appropriate in our mainstream classes, with teachers which have the right resource to differentiate and which have teaching and learning skills and pedagogy to cater for the needs of all learners. But there's no doubt that that's becoming increasingly challenging in our schools, but we are an inclusive authority. So our focus is about upskilling mainstream schools to be able to meet the needs of our learners.
I totally understand what you're saying, and I think I'm sorry, Angela, I don't want to steal your words, but it's just we're looking for answers before you got things in place. I really do understand that, and yeah, a piece of work. So it comes down to pace, etc. And we're anxious to see improvement, aren't we, Angela?
Yeah, we are, and I'm not sure that I'm hearing an answer. So maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, but it sounds to me like you think I think ALN pupils shouldn't be in main school, and that's absolutely wrong. I am fully supportive of ALN pupils in the school, and my particular school has worked really, really hard on this, has done an awful lot of training, and actually attracts pupils from out of the catchment into the school because of its inclusive ethos. So it's really successful, but actually that has been detrimental to the school in the fact that if a child is dysregulated, it doesn't matter what teaching skills you've got. It doesn't matter what strategies are in the strategic plan. It doesn't matter. Somebody, an individual, needs to support that child to do something other than in that moment. And if that teacher leaves the class, then there are the other 29 odd pupils in a class without a teacher. And what my point is here is the impact of the individual pupil who has very serious needs that need to be addressed urgently does have an impact on the rest of the class. And I'm just not hearing that we're recognizing that that impact may, in my opinion, resulted in this report. because it's not just my school, it's not just one class. I'm hearing it across Powys from parents who are dissatisfied with the support that their children get or the support that they get, from teachers who just don't know what to do, they're at their wits' end, from head teachers and from governors. But I'm kind of not hearing that same sense of urgency or concern from yourself. So maybe I'm missing, and I apologise if I am.
Okay, Angela, that's you stay there now. I know Councillor Gareth is Richard. I'm going to hold you there for a minute. I know Councillor Gareth was got something on ALN, so let's see what that develops, and then we can come back to Angela and Dr. Richard as well.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just a clarification of something I thought Dr. Richard just said. I thought Dr. Richard said there wasn't a recommendation around ALN in the Eston report.
He did.
But section 2.1 clearly states there is recommendation 3, or is the report that we're considering wrong?
Or there isn't an ALN recommendation?
Yes, there is. Sorry, Councillor Jones, there isn't, because recommendation 3 is to improve the outcomes of all learners, including ALN.
Well,
So
well,
it is there, but it's,
Yeah, well, I read that as ALN, and I would support everything that Angela said. You know, the main concerns I'm getting recently from parents, etc., is the very poor level of support provided to schools for ALN and SEN.
Okay, should we just note that there now, or do we want to have some further debate on that? Yeah, Dr. Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just brief. Thank you, Councillor Gareth. So just to make the point I wanted to make, then we've put a specific objective into our IBP that specifically references ALN. Sorry for any confusion around that. I just want to say, Councillor Davis, we do recognise the challenge in schools, and I also recognise the observations you made about wanting our mainstream schools to be those inclusive centres for all of our learners in Powys. So we're absolutely on the same page with that. What I'll take away from your observations really is, frustration around resource, frustration around schools having not having the tools they need to deal with some of the needs of some of our most challenging learners, and that point is properly heard and understood. I suppose what I would say, because there's a part of your question there which asks me to recognise the impact of a child whose needs are not being met on the rest of the class. And in a situation where a child's needs are not being met, yes, they would have an impact on the rest of the class. In an instant where a child's needs are not being met by the school or by the teacher or by a teaching assistant, or by not having appropriate space in a school, maybe a quiet zone or a sensory zone to go to if they need to quietly regulate themselves. But the observation that you make, I agree with you. If we're not meeting the needs of individual children, they will inadvertently, through no fault of their own, have an impact on the learners around them. That's right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We haven't got any questions at this moment in time, but I'm very mindful of the fact of the length of time this is taking. I'm also very mindful of the fact, the importance of this document. We haven't discussed many of the tables, so I'm just bringing that to members' minds, the families and the detail in those tables. So if there's any questions surrounding them, a couple of questions which I would like to explore first. I'm very conscious of the fact that our very tight budgets, and I'd like to understand what resource and funding is making to our outcomes in schools. Is there a risk to this current improvement plan, a financial risk? Are we able to carry it out due to finance implications? We need to be clear that our spending decisions are improving outcomes and not making anything detrimental. I'm also very conscious of the fact that many of our schools are dropping their curriculum offers because they can't deliver that curriculum. That breadth of curriculum, is that providing us poor outcomes as well? So there's the relationship between funding and curriculum and moving forward. I don't want to make it into a political debate saying, well, we're not giving our schools enough money. But if we would need to seek improvement in our schools, we have to be content that we are funding our schools in the right manner. Yeah. Very
Jeff,
open-ended question. Apologize.
Thank you. No, it's okay. Thank you. I don't want to get political, but that's why we fought and put the paper forward in November for council to agree to fully funding the funding formula. So that was a very, very important part, and we're really pleased that that has been agreed. But to give you reassurances as well, we are currently reviewing the element around options. So at the moment we do fund on a ratio of 1 to 25, and we're just doing a very intensive piece of work ready for consultation very, very early autumn term on whether we need to review that and the impact that will have on funding and our schools. So Councillor Thomas, to reassure you, intensive pieces of work are currently underway on that element.
Thank you. And just something on curriculum. I'm just concerned that our current curriculum may not be meeting the needs of learners.
Oh, that's why we're reviewing that 1 to 25 versus 1 to 20 ratio, because at the moment, does that allow for a school to provide that breadth of vocational and academic? So we're looking at how we fund it so that perhaps there's a little bit more flexibility for a school to provide an additional vocational subject as well. So that's the piece of work we're currently underway with. And just for you to know, Andrew Williams, who undertook the work with us, is doing a very, very deep dive in Crickhowell and Maes to see if we did amend the funding formula post-consultation, what impact that would have on the ability of those schools, a large secondary and a small secondary school, to be able to provide that breadth of offer.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for that reassurance. I've got one final question, really. Parental and community engagement. We're all in this together. So how are we improving that communication to gain trust with families in the first instance? How are we involving the wider community? And how are we gathering and responding to any feedback from parents and carers? I think this is important that they understand where we are as well. You still the microphone there, Richard.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, the point you make is right. The feedback from parents and carers is absolutely crucial. We're working with our head teacher development group to look at how we engage with parents and carers. We have started, in terms of ALN, a series of parent and carer sessions, and we're designing case studies around the lived experience of parents and carers, and already they're proving useful, feeding into the Wave 3 work. What we know around the engagement with parents and carers is that trust often lies between the parent, the carer, and the school, which is why we're working with our head teacher development group to look at how we can better engage as a local authority with parents and carers through our schools. Part of that engagement as well is us as an authority thinking around how do we have a really clear communication with parents, carers, grandparents, responsible adults around their responsibility in terms of young people's education. So attendance and getting your child to school being a really clear example of that. Just the other point to make, we're also, as a council, developing a full young person's engagement voice strategy. We really want to make the move from just listening to young people to actually starting to think with them and co-construct policy and strategic direction with them. So that's an area of focus for the council, and our youth service team are currently working on producing that strategy as well. So stakeholder engagement is absolutely key to us.
Thank you, Dr. Richard. Councillor Gareth.
Sorry, I thought Angela's got her hand up first.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Angela.
don't mind if Councillor Gareth wants to go.
Go on,
ahead.
Councillor Angela, you've got the
Got
Okay.
the
floor.
same question.
Yeah.
You stole my thunder there a bit about that partnership work, and we did talk about it in the beginning of the meeting, isn't it? How important it is we all work together. So I'm pleased to hear that, and I just want to say I'm really pleased to hear that you're engaging with the youth service team. That's one of the teams in Powys that has received a good Estin inspection, isn't it? So it's great that you're going to be using that skill in doing that. So thank you very much for that. A thought I had about that in terms of parents' engagement, there was somewhere in the paper, I can't quite see it now, where it talked about Powys's Estin inspections over a very long period of time, and we've been yo-yoing where we've had good, poor. We seem to be very good at improving but not sustaining that improvement. So I think it is fair to say that some of our parents today would have themselves been going through their education at a time when perhaps we weren't doing so well. So, you know, there may be some reason there why they're disengaged from school, and therefore, you know, there is work that needs to be done on that. So I'm pleased to hear that you're considering that and doing work on that. So although I give you a hard time, I do recognise that a lot of work is going on behind the scenes, and I welcome it. And I welcome the report that you've got there, looking at the ways in which you're going to address these issues and change them. However, the cynic in me, and I'm so sorry, you know, I've read reports in the past, the report on the Chweched 6, which was going to resolve all our sixth form problems. And we had a report similar to this that told us how good it was going to be and how positive, and it wasn't. And Estin have said it was a terrible idea from the start. And again, Ysgol Calon Cymru, we had a report telling us how if we amalgamated these two schools, we'd resolve all the problems and whoopie-doo, it was going to be great. And it didn't quite work. So I suppose, being ultra critical, I'm asking, how can we be convinced that what you've put in this paper is actually the right thing to do? What crystal ball can we look in to convince ourselves that we can get this right once and for all, for our pupils, for our teachers, for our parents, and for us as a county, as residents living here? We need good quality teachers, doctors, road maintenance workers, Powys employees. You know, we need all this workforce, and we need to be training them well, don't we?
Not a difficult question, Angela. I'm going to take Councillor Gareth's question next as well, and then we'll come to Councillor Pete and Dr. Richard, please.
Yeah, just 2 points on the action plan. Really welcome the fact that you've got a lot of projected KPIs to be measured against. But I'll make the same plea here as I made in last week's meeting around the quality plan. Can we have something around current or prior performance that we can measure against it? Now, you start with Q1, 25-26. I like to see, where appropriate, some figures around actuals in 24-25. The second point is on section 1.22.1 in the action plan. There's a statement there: increase access to Welsh medium education in Mid and South Powys by establishing a new all-age Welsh medium school in Builth Wells. Isn't that predetermination? Now, we're in the middle of consultation at the moment. That statement that says this is what we're going to do, regardless of what the outcomes of the consultation is. You know, I attended Calon Cymru last week. I asked them several questions, and I was told, can't do that because it's predetermination. Can't do that, blah, blah, blah. But now we've got it actually in a document in front of us.
Okay, it's a good point. So I'm coming to you, Dr. Richard, for Councillor Angela's, Councillor Gareth's points. Or Anwen.
I'll start if that's all right. With Councillor Andrew's points. Yeah, thank you. Essentially, what's different, isn't it? What's going to be different this time? Okay, I think first of all, I think this time, from the moment that we have received this Estin report, we've been absolutely clear about the messages in that report. I don't think we have sugarcoated the report. And when I say we, I'm talking whole council. I don't think we've sugarcoated the report. I don't think we have tried to make excuses for the report. I think there's been absolute clarity of conversation around what the situation is in our local authority. I think there's been an acknowledgement of the need to improve standards, and that as an authority across the authority, we are not delivering what we need to deliver for our learners to have the best life chances. I think that acknowledgement, it's taken different people, different lengths of time to come to that acknowledgement. But I think, again, clarity of information, clarity of messaging is bringing people to the point that we're currently reaching, this session being a really important part of arriving at that point. So we all acknowledge what the situation is with a good evidence base. You know, I haven't been in the authority for a long time, but people say to me that feels different to where we've been previously. Next stage of what's different, I think it is how we have actually planned for improvement. It strikes me from what I've learned about how we've approached things historically, that in response to an ESTIN inspection, we have written a plan for the inspectorate, limited to the recommendations of the inspectorate. I think the result of that way of planning has been that we only consider what the inspectorate has told us. So our focus becomes very narrow. Our energies simply go in one area, which is to tick a box in order to move out of an ESTIN category. The way we are planning this time, it's far broader, and it's all about sustainable improvement. We've written a post-inspection action plan, but it is heart of a service improvement plan, which considers wider points than the inspectorate simply noted. It draws on evidence from our own evaluations, from conversations with stakeholders. So I don't think we are just responding to the inspectorate. We're actually thinking about what's going to bring about sustainable improvement. It's more system-wide. Linked to that, I think, who has been involved in the writing of the plan? This hasn't been education service locked behind closed doors. There's been lots of contributors to the IBP, directors from across the authority, chief executive, political commentary, working closely with other authorities and other partners that we can learn from. So in the writing of the IBP, I feel that as a council, we are stepping up to understand where our responsibility lies in driving up the standards in our schools. So it's about us in our individual roles, respective roles, accepting accountability for our part in the improvement journey, which is underway. I think that's significantly different. And then the third thing I would comment on would be actually the challenge that's been brought and the quick pace with which we've engaged with partners and shared information so we can have challenge from the outset. That challenge, I think, has brought us to a point where we're acting at pace on the things we can act on, but we're actually getting to the nub of some of the issues in the authority, which for me is around the relationship we've got with our schools and that function that we have of providing challenge and support. What does it mean? What does the delegation of delegated duties mean in an authority? What is the relationship between a strong, confident authority supporting schools but bringing challenge to them? And I think we're in that period where we are redefining that so that we've got that culture right to deliver on a strategy. So I think there are some fundamental shifts. First of all, just to repeat, that acknowledgement of the situation, that collective planning, collective accountability, and we're not being frightened of getting to the root of some of our historic problems which account for the yo-yoing. So I feel there's a real shift in how we're thinking and doing things.
Okay.
And I think as well, we've to add on that, we've also visited other local authorities who've been on similar journeys to us, and to learn from them as well. That's been a big part of putting the IBP together. So coming back to Councillor Gareth Jones's questions. When we published the agenda for this, it was after, no, it was at the same time as the governor meeting. So Councillor Jones, I just want to reassure you that we are working on adding those baselines into the version, the live version as we speak. And then the second element around the YCC predetermination, and what we've done is reflect what's in the WESP, in the 10-year WESP. So I do, and nobody's picked up on that before, but we've just reflected the wordings from the WESP around Welsh medium provision, but it is something we'll take on board. Thank you.
Thank you both. Dr. Richard, we certainly recognise that one, isn't it? I will go back to Councillor Angela. I think it was a very good answer to a very difficult question. I'm going to come back to you, Councillor Angela.
Yeah, it was, and I really welcome that, and to hear of that collaborative approach of talking to others and taking ownership of it, that's really positive. And yeah, just to repeat that, thank you. I do recognise an awful lot of work is going on behind the scenes, but yeah, it's how we keep the continuum, isn't it, going? Thank you very much. Yeah.
Good. Councillor Pete.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go back to the other part of Angela's question around ALN, and one thing that Dr. Richard didn't mention. We are taking some of the learning from the work that adult social care have done in terms of looking at cases that have gone through and seeing, is there an intervention earlier that we could have made, or a different intervention that would have changed the course of that individual's experience with us. And to that end, we've got a piece of work that is just starting, where we've got agreement from three groups of parents who've not had the best of experience with us, with ALN, facing particular challenges, and we're going to be looking to work with them over the next couple of months to explore where the problems that they believe exist within the system have come about, and whether there are different interventions or different processes that we could follow within the ALN system, which will give better outcomes or more speedy outcomes, depending on what the particular concern is. So we're looking to transfer knowledge that has been developed by other service areas that is proving effective, and bringing those processes into the education service. That's work that's in its very early days. Dr. Richard has assigned a member of staff to work on that, and we got some initial discussions by email to build on that, but hopefully we'll be able to report back to this committee, probably in confidential session because of the nature of the work, about what the outcomes from that are in future.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pete. I was just having a quick look at the chat. Sarah Parry is currently leading the team of SIAs in our schools, and Anwyn has answered there. So Cressy Murphy and Irig. And we've got 5 full-time primary and 2.2 FTE secondary SIAs. And this is all being reviewed, as we've been told, as part of the service restructure. Okay, so just make sure that that detail is in our meeting. Members, I'm conscious of the fact this is a massive document, and there's much in the document we haven't touched on, but we've asked a lot of questions, and we're 2 hours into this session. Are we content that we've given this enough scrutiny at this stage? We haven't been through the tables, and I know we made an awful lot of comment in the pre-meet in relation to the tables, but some of that has been answered in our discussions today. So are we content to bring this item on the agenda to a close? Yeah, Councillor Angela.
Yeah, I'm just asking, really, when we'll next get to look at it, because I think it's quite important that Scrutiny get to continue looking at this to see how we're doing as we move along that improvement line.
This is a positive outcome that the service is now coming to us quarterly. So that gives us a measure of improvement, etc., etc. So this is our second one now. So this will come to us quarterly now, which I think is really, really positive. So
yeah, good. Thank you, Chair.
Good. so we'll bring this to an end. Kath, we're making some observations to Cabinet surrounding this, are we? Yeah.
Yes, you can. It is going to go to Cabinet as for noting, I believe.
Yeah.
But if there are recommendations that the committee want to put forward, I'm sure.
Councillor Pete, is that how you see our role here to bring something forward to Cabinet?
Yeah, I would very much welcome your observations. There's been some really detailed discussion that is really positive, and I wouldn't like to see it lost. So having some scrutiny observations coming back to sit alongside this, I would very much welcome that and your contribution at the meeting.
Good. Members, are you content that we do something along them lines now? The other point is we're on agenda item 6. We've got another substantive and also some scrutiny recommendations. What have we scheduled a meeting for today, Kath?
Meeting scheduled, Chair, to finish at 12:30.
Right. So I'm asking you while we're doing these recommendations whether we continue with the agenda or we push them onto another agenda as well, because we are scheduled to finish at 12:30. Okay. Observations, recommendations. Anything burning from members now? I've made a few notes as we go along.
Yeah, Chair, I'd like us to recognise the huge amount of work that's gone on, and also to thank the service for recognising their role and responsibility and taking ownership of this. And I was also really, really pleased to hear that they're collaborating with other services within the council, but also looking out to other authorities and other areas to learn good practice. So those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Remember what I'm not dismissing what you're saying there, but remember what the document we're considering here. The document is school standards and improvement report. We're examining the present day and not what the vision is. So we need to recognise our disappointment with the report and where our schools currently stand. But yes, I totally agree with you, Angela, surrounding that. Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, I think there's the point that Anwin's accepted that we need to have some current or pre-existing performance data in the alongside the KPIs.
Yeah, I think that's a point to be made. It's my bugbear, really. The funding surrounding any connection with funding in relation to our outcomes. Not sure what we can put in surrounding that, really. I believe there to be a connection. I believe we're squeezing our schools too thin. And that was the point I was trying to make. And schools are having difficulty fulfilling their obligations. Teachers teaching across subject, etc., etc., etc. Would you be content to put something around that lines into the report?
Yep.
Yep. Sarah.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not sure how we raised this point, but it was around accountability and the high turnover in recent years of the SAAs that Councillor Sue raised in the start.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. We've been informed today that that they're reviewing this and going on, so it can be our recommendation. Something surrounding the challenge advisors, etc., their relationships with school, the resource behind it. Yeah, Councillor Lucy.
Yeah, I'd just like to make sure that there's something in there about the increasing role of school governors and concerns about how that's met and the pressure put on governors to undertake that role.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we can add to that by saying Councillor Pete explained his reasoning behind the process. I think we can comment that the process is causing us a few problems.
I think, sorry, Chair, to interrupt, but that was particularly around the process of LEA governors. but it's not just LEA governors, it's community governors, it's parent governors. You know, the responsibility on governors in general has become greater, and people don't necessarily have the time to put into that role that they would wish to do, and some don't understand the amount of time that's going to be involved in the role when they initially put themselves forward, even when it is explained to them.
Yeah, Sarah.
Sorry, Chair, that was my other point, was the county council representation of governors on our governing body at Brecon High School. I know that's more a local issue, but it comes back to this wider issue. Given the significant issues we have at Brecon, is there anything we can do about the county councillor representation on our governing body?
Yep, I'm more than content to put something along them lines. Kath has reminded us in the chat about cross-border deep dive. Councillor Pete mentioned in relation to post-16. I would add that pre-16 as well. So I think we would welcome something along these lines or more information. So we can build that as long as we've got it in as an observation and a recommendation. Anything else?
Yeah, I'd support that, Chair, because we sort of talked about why we think these youngsters are leaving the county, but the truth is we don't know, do we?
ALN?
Yes, please. I was just going to come to that.
Word something along them lines then, please, Angela.
Yeah. Well, really, I think we've expressed our concerns for the support for schools in with their ALN pupils. I'm not sure it's just financial. I'm not sure, but
could we say the vision doesn't meet up with expectation?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. I'm just going through my notes now. Bearing in mind, we need to concentrate what has been said in our meeting.
With regard to the ALN, I mean, there's also the impact there of the other services that these pupils might need. So whether it's speech and language or healthcare provision or other social services interventions or other things that do impact on schools and aren't necessarily always as agile, for a better word, as they should be in supporting the pupils.
Yep. We spoke about resource within our SIAs. I'm concerned that we have the resource. Richard spoke very eloquently about our vision and about the way forward and what was different. I think we need to be clear that we've got the resource within the service as well to carry out this. It's a question perhaps we should have asked. Do they feel that they've got the resource to carry out the plan? So that's maybe something I would like to add as well. Good. You content with that?
Can we just ask Kath if there's anything that she's jotted down that we've missed, Gwynfor?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Quickly running through my notes, it was the cross-border work that has been brought up on a number of occasions.
Yeah, okay. Good. Thanks, Kath. Okay, we'll develop that, Lucy and myself, and we'll meet with Kath and see what we can come up with. Great. Thank you very much for that. Good piece of scrutiny. Important piece of scrutiny, but a massive report, and thanks officers for helping us with that today, and also the portfolio. Right, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items left on our work program. It's 12:13, and I'm sorry I didn't divide the time up better, but I didn't want to stop the conversation in relation to this previous report. What else do you want to take? Do you want to go to the site safeguarding budget paper? Will we be able to give it due consideration in the time we've got? How do you feel, or do you want to do some of the scrutiny recommendations to Cabinet? Well, how do you feel we best completing our meeting today? Kath, would there be a problem with moving the site safeguarding paper on? I know we've got a busy work program, but
Councillor Pete does have his hand up, but it has already been to Cabinet. this
Yes,
paper,
exactly. It has been
Chair,
to
so it
cabinet,
is more
we
for
can-
noting.
Yeah, Councillor Pete.
That was exactly what I was going to say. We've already passed this paper at cabinet. We welcome observations post fact, obviously. But if there's other work that you've got on your agenda that may be better prioritised in those areas, I leave that with you, though.
Yeah, no, it's an important point. The only thing that I worry about with the safeguarding budget paper is there is some factual mistakes in it, and it's worrying that it's gone through cabinet in that condition. Councillor Gareth. Gareth, your microphone, please.
Sorry, Chair. That's exactly the point I was going to make. We needed some clarification on some of the figures.
Okay, so I'm in your hands, members. Do you want to overrun the meeting and deal with it, or what should we do?
Could we
I'm
deal
happy
with
to stay on.
Yeah, could we deal with the issues that we know exist? Because if we don't draw attention to them now, it's going to be too late. I mean, it's already too late to some extent in the fact it's already gone to cabinet, but the longer we leave it, the worse it becomes.
Yeah. Those who are in the pre-meet will know my feelings on this. This paper was brought forward, and I think there's wider discussion on this paper rather than just the budget side of it. But I'm happy to open up item 7, notice those mistakes, and discuss it. I know members are willing to continue. I'm just wondering about officers who've got other time if we go into the discussion of this report. Should we just go into the report and discuss those factual mistakes which we believe, and leave it there and bring it back at some future date and discuss the wider issues around it? Right, okay, we'll go on to item 8 on your paper. It's pages 143 to 152. We just have a quick discussion on it and point out them factual mistakes which we believe should have been picked up in before it went to cabinet, really. Right. Gwilym, I believe Gwilym is in the meeting. In first instance, Councillor Pete, do you wish to make any comment on this before we go to Gwilym?
No, this is a paper
Well, it's
that
not. It's not in your portfolio, is it?
It's a paper that I put to cabinet because it was within Councillor Jake's portfolio. This is basically the first response from officers and cabinet in respect to the safeguarding related recommendation, and was to bring forward additional funding in year so that we can address some of the matters that we've identified in year rather than in 2 or 3 years' time. Willem, I think, will give you more detail on that, or Dr. Richard, who I just seen to put his camera on.
Thank you, Councillor Pete. Gwilym, I hope you heard my babbling introduction. We are running a bit behind time, so we're going to give a quick, brief overview on this, but we would be grateful for any opening comments which you have.
Chair, given Councillor Pete's comments there, the report is for noting, and I'll be open for any questions that Scrutiny have.
Thank you. Right, members, straight to questions. Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think we need some more detail around the number of schools affected, the type of work is going to be. We don't need to know the school names, but we need to know the number of schools, the type of work, etc. But in terms of the funding, I'm confused. We're looking at 1.75 million funding, of which 400,000 is hopefully coming from a capital grant. Is the rest of it all capital expenditure? And I've got a follow-up question after that.
In relation to the number of schools affected, at the moment we've got 53 projects ongoing in relation to safeguarding. Now, just to not mislead you, some of those projects relate. There might be 2 projects for one school, for example, but at the moment I've just got 53 projects ongoing. And in relation to the types of works, some of those projects may relate to a variety of different safeguarding issues. So it could be traffic management as well as fences, as well as locks. So it's not just one safeguarding issue per project. They might be covering a variety of different safeguarding issues. With regards to the funding element, in paragraph 10.2, the funding is 400,000, which we're predicting from grants, 295,000 from the revenue budget, and then the 1.055 million capital. That is the breakdown of where the funding should be. Acknowledging that the 10.1 does say capital of 1.75. That is the breakdown in 10.02.
Yeah, the reason I raise it, because if it's at 1.75 million capital, we don't need the 295,000 revenue unless you're doing a direct funding of capital. The other thing is you're saying that 55,000 of this is going to be used to fund the borrowing for the 1.055 million. But at 5.5%, at £55,000 per million, you need 58,000, not 55,000. I've also got a question. We seem to be using different levels of funding per million on different reports. We've had this discussion with James before. Sometimes it's 55,000 per million, sometimes it's 60,000 per million. So I think there needs to be consistency across the board.
Councillor David is looking to come in to help with your questions, Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. My understanding on the preferred option 2, is that there's 350,000 already committed in the FRM for 25-26. There's 400. We hope to raise £400,000 from 3 different grants, and that leaves a shortfall of £1 million, which will have to be funded from borrowing. And then there'd be a direct impact for that borrowing cost on the revenue budget going forward. But with regard to clarity, and James is with us, the chief accountant for Capital, and I'm sure James Chappell could answer Garrett's question on that.
Yeah, good morning, members. Yeah, the cost per million of borrowing depends on the assets involved, so it will vary paper by paper. But so that's why you've seen picking up these discrepancies. But yeah, part of the revenue allocation will be used to directly fund capital, and part of it will be used to fund the borrowing of the just over £1 million. Is it that with the capital that's going to be there? So there's no increase, there's no change, no future implications of this paper in the FRM going forward, because it should all be funded from existing either revenue resources.
But the split of those two figures need to be changed, doesn't it? Because if it's at if it's £1,055,000 capital at £55,000 per million, that needs to be 58,000 and not the 55,000 as stated. I know it's peanuts, but yeah.
Yeah, and it depends what our MLP policy, and it depends what our MLP calculation is at the end of the year when these works are committed. So it's only estimates at this point in time, but I take your point, Councillor.
Yes. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? I was just looking at our pre-meeting notes then. Anything else we wish to raise at this point before we do some wider scrutiny? Councillor Angela.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say I welcome this work as a safeguarding governor in a school. It's an important topic. I know the work has been instigated really at this time following the Eston inspection, but I do welcome the work happening in our schools. And yeah, that's my only comment.
Yeah,
it's the safety of our pupils, isn't it?
Yeah, Councillor Angela, thank you. There was a discussion in our pre-meet, and shut me down if I get this wrong. There was discussion in our pre-meet that this work, which is outstanding, that we've done an extensive piece of work through the authority on outstanding work, etc., etc. How it seems to be a reaction to Eston inspections that the safeguarding work is outstanding. Just want to understand that, are we picking up on this outstanding work before Eston highlighted to us?
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the 53 outstanding safeguarding issues, I think around 15 were highlighted by Eston, and a lot of them we were aware of as well. The safeguarding is reported to us in a variety of different ways. Strategic property pickup when we visit sites. Education colleagues report it. Schools are the main source of reporting of safeguarding, quite rightly, because they're on site all the time. Health and safety colleagues, other regulators will all pick up and feed back into the council so that we can take a holistic approach to it. So it's not just Estin, and that's often thrown at us, saying that it's only because Estin have been there that these things are picked up, but that is not the case. They are,
no,
again,
that's
one source, Chair.
we're glad to have that clarification. Just you've mentioned the figure 53 today, which isn't in the report, and that's 53 over 29 schools.
It's since the cabinet report, there have been further safeguarding issues reported. This is an ongoing issue. It's not
Right.
a fixed scenario, and we will see increases as, for example, we roll out training on risk assessments. That's almost guaranteed to result in an increase in safeguarding reports coming back. So it isn't a fixed point in time. We're always undertaking works. For example, in the next quarter, we've got 20 projects that should be complete. So that'll have an impact on the numbers. But as we complete works, there's often other safeguarding issues that are reported. So thanks, Chair.
Yeah, no, so we content that even though you're identifying more than what the cabinet report picked up on, you're content that the resource that they've committed will be adequate to bring our schools up to the place where they should be.
From a safeguard perspective, the funding that has been secured will have a big impact on on our ability to undertake the safeguarding works required, as identified within those 53 projects. It is an ongoing matter, though, so it has to be under constant review. And if we do require further funds, then we'll have to raise that.
Yeah, I am going to come back at you now and say, well, look, the question I asked was the resource enough to complete what the report identified to bringing our estate up to the correct state in relation to safeguarding?
At that time, Chair, the funding was sufficient. So we have had other safeguarding issues reported to us. We have to analyse those, get the feasibilities, and then have a better understanding of a way forward.
Okay, thanks, Graham. I've lost my screen now. Any other questions? Are you content at this stage? Sarah?
Thanks, Chair. My question was just around contractors and our relationship with contractors and their obligations, particularly in new builds. So where the safeguarding issues have arisen, where does that liability sit? Is it with the contractors or with the school themselves? And that was off the back of our discussion of scaffolding around Brecon High School.
Yeah, no, that's Sarah. I think that's an important point you just raised there.
It all depends on the contracts that we have with the contractors. Generally, if with new builds, there is a certain time frames where we are able to hold contractors to account and ensure that they undertake the repair works where it's required. But each site is based on its own merits there, and it depends on the contracts in place. But I'm happy to talk to any schools if they wish to have any discussions about individual sites and the contracts.
Yeah, I think in the pre-meet, Sarah raised some important points in relation to an individual school. I don't want to open that discussion today because scrutiny isn't about that, but I think there is a conversation to be had there somewhere along the lines. One final question, Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, just one final question. Just 2 points. One, the 350,000, in my understanding, that's an ongoing revenue allocation, the FRM, so that's there for 26-27 as well. Second point is, when will the affected school or the schools where the works will be undertaken be informed of those works?
I think communication with schools is something that needs to improve from our perspective. We're working on our database and also creating a dashboard so that all schools will be able to monitor the works at each stage. So they got a full understanding of when work's going to take place, who's the main contract, so that they don't have to actually contact strategic property to get those updates. They'll be there electronically, all live information. So we're working at that on those. But generally, the school will be informed when we are planning to do the works, because often the schools will ask for us to delay certain works or bring forward certain works based on their the operations of the schools. For example, exam period. Schools often, especially high schools, don't want works to be taking place during an exam period this time of year. So it is something that we have to work in partnership, but it's definitely somewhere where we've identified as weakness and are working on dashboards to improve our communication with schools, but not just schools, but with other stakeholders who are involved in this process.
Happy, Councillor Gareth?
Yeah, I'm just concerned that we're only 5 weeks away from the end of school term, and if some of these works are planned for the summer holidays, then schools need to be aware so they can actually make sure there's somebody there to open and close the school, especially in the smaller primary schools.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Gareth. And on the back of that, obviously we committed some financial resource. Are we confident that we can get this work carried out in a suitable time frame, that we can get our schools safe? Are we confident we got the resource, the contractors, the procurement around us, that we can get this work done?
We are confident, you know, in relation to the timeframes for the works. I've asked for realistic timeframes, not just what they think that I want to hear. And then we've got that program out over the next 4 quarters. Some works we haven't been able to put a fixed time frame on. Certain works, for example, will relate to resolving complex issues such as public rights of way, you know, getting things, for example, diverted, so we'd have to manage the risk on site. It could be listed buildings, and again, having to get listed building consents, or trying to find solutions for those elements. So there are certain very small number of projects which we can't put exact timeframes on.
Yeah, no, thank you for that assurance, Councillor Gwilym. I'm suggesting now that we've got no further questions on that, because there's nobody indicating. I think we will try and do a bit of work on this at some point to look at the wider aspect of it. And I think Councillor Garrett's comments in the beginning, to see the list of outstanding work. I'm surprised Cabinet didn't want to see that in the report, really. To see the list of outstanding work will help us to understand the projects going forward. So yeah, so thank you for your time today, Gwilym, and also Councillor Pete in relation to this, but sorry to be so rushed over it, but time doesn't allow us today.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, I'm going to suggest now that the only other piece of work that we do today is a quick look at our work programme. Sorry, we will have to push these scrutiny recommendations just to give it some thought at some point, but we'll push them on so that we don't overdo today's meeting with officers, because obviously they've got other commitments which they need to fulfill today. Just a quick look at the work programme. So the next meeting will be the 7th of July. Kath, we have a few problems with this, and I got a bit of brain freeze at the moment. Can you just update us what the problem surrounding the outturn reports and the school budgets is, please?
The outturn report, Chair, I had notification from Finance that they were going to be a bit delayed. I think they were supposed to be going to in June, but we've moved them now to July so they could fit in with the CLT, Cabinet CLT work programme.
So they have been moved, so we're okay with that?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, they're coming in July, I believe.
Good. We've also tried to progress a school visit, which we know is on our calendar, but it's not in our work programme at this present moment in time, but we think it'd be useful for us to go and get the views from head teachers down from school, visit the coalface, as they say. So that will be added to our work programme at some point. Any other comments on our work programme?
Chair,
Anything?
Chair, just just to say, I attended the child poverty event in Astragan last Thursday, and it started before the event started. We went to Oscar Golokum and had an inspirational 3/4 an hour with the head teacher there. So if you want around the ALN well-being, poverty, etc., it was it was really, really good. And if you wanted these, I know it's a long way for a lot of members, but it'd be one school be worth considering looking at, because it's in a high level of deprivation. I think it's 45% on FSM, but the work they're doing is stunning.
I wonder, Councillor Gareth, it'll probably be difficult for us to visit the school. I wonder, Councillor Gareth, if you'd give us a brief summary of your visit in an email at some point.
I will do.
I think, but I certainly think that would help us in our discussions.
Yeah, no, it was stunning. Yeah, it almost brought tears to my eyes.
You mentioned it in the pre-meet, so I just wondered if you brought it to our attention, because sometimes we're totally oblivious to what is going on in our schools, and that'd be good. Dr. Richard.
Chair, just to say, I'm sure the head would be, if appropriate, would be willing to come to a scrutiny session to share the work as well.
There we go then. That
Do you want to capture that?
Yeah, no, that'd be useful, wouldn't it, members?
Yeah, but I personally think that would have to be in person, Chair. Personally, that's my view. Because it wasn't in the classroom, we were just in a community room, but it was really, really good.
You don't think he'd be able to portray that in an online meeting, no?
I don't know. You won't get the passion. I don't think you get the passion, personally.
Okay.
And I see some council police just said about a whole member development session, which may be worth it.
Okay. There's an opportunity for us here to have a face-to-face meeting as well.
Yeah.
And we could bring that head together. So should we look at the 1st of July meeting or the September the 9th meeting to have a face-to-face meeting? And ask the head if he could attend one of them?
She.
Yeah. I did say the head.
Yeah. But then you said he.
All right, okay. All right then. Right, I stand corrected. Kath just put, we'll try and do that then if that's everybody's wish. Kath just put a comment in the chat. The finance officers are wondering what information do the committee want in confidential session in relation to school budgets, rather than just a slide on individual schools, themes, etc. Any suggestions what we would like them to bring to the meeting?
Outturn figures for 24-25, including the carry forward figure in your position, carry forward figure at the end of March, and then the same for 25-26 planned budget. And I suppose any schools where they're making significant staffing changes.
Yeah, happy with them suggestions. Anybody else got something? Thanks to the education team. They're giving their apologies. They have to go to other meetings in the chat. We really do thank you. Thanks for being with us today. Yeah, any other suggestions on the confidential session on finance that we need to see?
What detail goes to cabinet on the school's planned budget?
Can we ask for that?
I'm just wondering, do we need to be confidential if it's going to go to cabinet, and I assume in a non-confidential manner?
We usually do part of the session is in public, and then if there is a breakdown, as has happened previously, onto individual schools, that has to go into confidential session.
Okay, yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
It just seems sometimes with some of the individual schools that we don't get enough information to understand why they have significant deficits, for instance. I don't know whether it would be possible to have that or not, but we sometimes have the bare figures, but not really enough explanation around them.
Okay, more detail. The more detail or more narrative in relation to why the school is in that situation.
Particularly schools that have been, struggling for some time.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fair.
I suppose with that link to that, Chair, it's trend on pupil numbers. You know, numbers funded 24, 25, numbers funded 25, 26. So you can actually see what the trend is.
Yep. Anything else on finances? Anwen's put in the chat, she's left us now. The schools also opened their doors to other schools under expanding horizons back in the autumn term. I think it'd be beneficial if we shared these invites with you too. That would be useful. That if available, we could attend then. Yeah, that'd be good. Are you happy that we leave the meeting now? Or I know officers have left us. It doesn't stop us dealing with the rest of the agenda, but or do you want to shunt them on to another meeting?
Remember, those recommendations are really just, that's from today's meeting, isn't it? So the only thing that we haven't covered is the feedback from the previous meetings.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. So we've got feedback on our previous school standards and improvement report. That was the last quarter, and we've also got feedback on the post-16 recommendations we made. I think we should consider the recommendations in a greater detail. This is something which has been. That's why I'm anxious just not to note them today without giving them full scrutiny, really. But I'm happy to deal with them today.
Why don't we just move those forward then, and
so we
as you say,
move
deal with them properly.
The only thing, Chair, looking through them, most of them have been accepted.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what discussion. There's only the one recommendation on page 166 that hasn't been accepted. So so it's only the one to discuss, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm happy to discuss that today. So that would be in
so it's page 166.
Agenda 10, yeah?
Yeah.
Agenda item 10. Should we just have a look at that one then quick? I know we haven't got officers in the room. So should we have a quick look at that?
And if you can see, it says the recommendation was to remove reference to improved outcomes in support of option 3 that do not have substantive evidence. And an explanation has been put there.
Yeah, do you accept that recommendation? That's really what we want. But again, we should be looking.
It's basically saying that it's already in the appendix as opposed to in the main report, but it'll be further explored through the engagement exercise. So that seems quite reasonable to me.
Yeah, should we just note that we accept their answer then?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
happy with that.
And I think the committee should be pleased that all the other recommendations have been accepted, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, content with that one?
Yep.
Should we just deal with item 7 on the agenda as well? Which is recommendations which we made on the previous school standards and improvement report. I can't find that on my agenda at the moment. Is that in our report?
No, it isn't.
Just regarding recommendations do Scrutiny want to make? Because obviously I put this agenda together prior to the cabinet.
I apologise. I'm reading the agenda
Sorry,
wrong.
Chair.
So we've completed the agenda then?
Yes, you have.
Ah, better than what I thought.
You're doing yourself an injustice, Chair.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, everybody content? We've completed the meeting then?
Yep.
Good. Do you want to stay online for a quick chat afterwards, or are we content? Or we had enough?
Content, I think.
All right then. We'll see you. Sarah, you've got your hand up.
Sorry, Chair, it's just come to my attention that we asked a long time ago for a report on staffing costs within our schools around sickness, absenteeism, HR, legal issues, ongoing things that are a significant cost to schools. I just wondered, have I missed that, or have we never had that?
No, we've never had it. So could we add that to our session when we go financing with us?
I wonder if that would tie into the question of, a lot of our money that's unexplained is sometimes on those issues.
It would give us a better understanding of school positions if we had that knowledge, wouldn't it?
Confidentially, obviously.
Yeah, we'll ask that, Sarah. Thank you. Okay, thanks for today's meeting. Sorry I've left it overrun, but as I said, we've had a lot to discuss, and I hope you think that we've dealt with it in the correct manner. Thanks to everybody who attended. Thank you.
Thank you.